In this exploration, we delve into the fascinating world of cognitive biases and how they shape our perception and decisions. We start with the bias blind spot, an intriguing aspect where we think we're less biased than others. It's like being convinced we're the most objective person in the room. Next, the gambler's fallacy. This occurs when we mistakenly believe past events influence future probabilities. It's like expecting tails on a coin flip after several heads, despite each flip being independent. Omission bias is our tendency to see doing nothing as less harmful than doing something wrong. It's judging a lie as worse than withholding the truth, even though both can be equally harmful. Proportionality bias is where we assume big events must have big causes. This often leads us to believe in elaborate conspiracy theories for major events. The moral credential effect is a curious thing. It happens when doing a good deed makes us feel entitled to be less good later. It's the idea of rewarding ourselves with a treat after doing something responsible. Self-serving bias involves taking more credit for our successes than our failures. We attribute wins to our skills, but blame losses on external factors. The framing effect shows how the presentation of information can alter our decisions. It's not just the facts that matter, but how they're framed. Actor-observer bias is about perception. We explain others' actions by their personality, but our own actions by our circumstances. The picture superiority effect indicates we remember things seen in pictures better than in words. A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. Outcome bias is judging a decision by its outcome rather than its merit at the time. It's like criticizing a decision only because it didn't work out, ignoring the context when it was made. The mere exposure effect shows our preference for familiar things. We tend to like what we know. The hard-easy effect is our tendency to overestimate our ability to perform hard tasks and underestimate our ability to do easy ones. Survivorship bias occurs when we focus on successful examples while ignoring those that failed. It's like considering only successful people's stories without recognizing many others didn't make it. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is noticing something everywhere once we learn about it. It's not actually more frequent, we're just more aware of it. Availability heuristic leads us to overestimate the likelihood of events that come easily to mind. Recent or dramatic events seem more likely because they're top of mind. The Dunning-Kruger effect is where unskilled people overestimate their abilities and experts underestimate theirs. It's a curious mix of ignorance and expertise. The halo effect is when one trait of a person influences our overall view of them. Good-looking people are often perceived as kinder or more intelligent. The Pygmalion effect is a self-fulfilling prophecy where others' expectations of a person influence their behavior. In marketing, the decoy effect is used to change consumer preferences by introducing a third option that makes one of the original options more attractive. Selection bias occurs when the selection process for a study or analysis leads to unrepresentative results. Anchoring bias is relying too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, like a first impression setting the stage for all future interactions. Confirmation bias is our tendency to search for and remember information that supports our preconceptions. The overconfidence effect is having excessive confidence in our own answers, often leading us to be wrong more often than we expect. Egocentric bias is seeing the world from our own perspective and overestimating our own importance. Information bias is the unnecessary pursuit of information when it doesn't affect our actions. Hindsight bias is thinking we knew something was going to happen after it has already happened. Projection bias is assuming our future selves will share our current preferences and values. Epiphania is seeing connections where none exist, like finding patterns in random data. The serial position effect is remembering the first and last items in a list better than the middle ones. Recency bias gives more weight to recent events, like an interviewer favoring the last candidate they spoke with. Authority bias is our tendency to believe an authority figure regardless of their actual expertise. Unit bias is consuming a standard amount, like a food serving size, regardless of our actual needs. Availability cascade is a belief becoming more plausible the more it's repeated in public discourse. The bandwagon effect is doing things because many others doth them, either to conform or because we think the majority must be right. The illusory truth effect is believing something is true because we've heard it repeatedly. The next in line effect is our tendency to forget what someone said just before our turn to speak. In-group bias is favoring people who are part of our own group, often because they're more familiar to us. The spotlight effect is overestimating how much others notice about us. Choice supportive bias is remembering our choices as better than they were, focusing on their positives and ignoring their negatives. The ostrich effect is avoiding negative information to avoid discomfort. Selective perception bias is ignoring or forgetting information that causes emotional discomfort or contradicts our beliefs. The peak end rule is perceiving an experience based on how it was at its peak and how it ended, not the sum of the entire experience. These biases reveal the intricate workings of our minds, highlighting the importance of understanding and questioning our own thoughts and decisions. Stay tuned for more insights into the fascinating world of psychology.